Hey everyone, this week is a really cool episode. Got Scott Radinsky on the pod from Scared Straight, 10-foot pole and Pulley. And yeah, cool interview. We go into his music career. I also address his career in professional baseball. So it's kind of cool interweaving the two. And yeah, Scott was really gracious with his time, and I appreciate him coming on the pod. And I hope you enjoy. To support this podcast, please like, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you could please take the time to do that. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you just go and you give it 5 stars and maybe leave like a sentence long review. That stuff goes a long way. And it is much appreciated. So once again, if you could just take out the extra time to just go and like the podcast wherever you listen, that would be awesome. Also, please subscribe. Please share with your friends. This is a grassroots effort. I'm doing it for the love. And just try to get the word out if you like it. That's the most important thing. If you want to go the extra mile, you can support the podcast on Patreon. That's patreon.com/185 miles south. And you can subscribe with like a monthly donation there, $1 a month, $3 a month, $5 or more, and that is much appreciated as well. You can also donate via PayPal. That's paypal.me/185 miles south. Let's get going with Scott. Hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening, guys.
185 miles south. A hardcore punk rock podcast.
Today
sirens in the back.
that's fine. Today on the pod we have Scott Radinsky from Scared Straight and 10-foot pole and Pulley. And Scott, how did you meet the Scared Straight guys, and did you get into punk at the same time?
When we were in school together, junior high school together, kind of grew up in the same neighborhood, really. And I don't know, I think it was somewhere around 8th, 9th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, started playing some instruments. And by 9th grade, I can't remember what vacation it was, either like Christmas break or Easter break or something, but I think it was Easter. We started jamming in the garage and trying to play some songs and rather than just play by ourselves in our rooms,
Yeah.
we just started jamming together.
And did you start playing drums, or did you start off singing?
I played drums. I played drums for probably about 2-3 years before I started singing.
Okay.
Well, at least that's what it felt like.
So,
yeah.
The first time that Scared Straight put something out is 84, but when does the band actually start?
Oh God, the band probably started somewhere in late 81, early 82.
Mm-hmm.
We probably played, I don't know, solid year probably before we ever did anything live. And then we did this battle of the bands at a roller skating rink locally here in town, and actually killed it and won.
Awesome.
And then I played our junior high school. We were in 9th grade, like at lunchtime, on the quad. And then just started playing some gigs, like, down in Hollywood at the Cafe, the Grand, started playing some shows down there. And that's when when Tony of Ill Repute was putting together the Nardcore record, and I was still playing drums at the time when we got asked to do that. And I actually played drums on that record, and then that's when I made the transition to sing. Like, we recorded the music, and then like a week later, we had to go sing, and our singer was out of town, so they were telling us we had to get it done, and I volunteered, and that's kind of how it happened.
That's a wrap for him.
Yeah, I guess.
That's hilarious. Did you record at Mystic for that?
We did, yeah.
What was that experience like?
You know what? It was been a long time, but from what I can remember, we just drove down there. We set set our equipment up. They put some mics on it, and that was pretty much it. It was really quick. It was weird. We had recorded like some demos in our living rooms and stuff before, all live, but this was kind of like we were recording without the vocals. So it was weird. We were playing music and then, and we didn't do any overdubs or anything. It was all live, like, guitar, bass, drums, all at the same time. But, it was cool. It was our first time in like a real studio. So it was kind of a cool experience, and we were young. And, so for us, it was awesome. It was like, yeah, this is cool. We're going in and recording. We got to hear it back on these huge speakers and thought, wow, man, this is good.
We rip.
Yeah, we rip. Exactly.
Yeah. So do you record the song for Party Animal in that same session, or do you go back to Mystic to just do one song?
Oh yeah, we did. We went back to Mystic and did one song on multiple compilations after that.
Okay.
We did the Nardcore songs, and then, and somewhere between the record coming out and recording it, they had called and said, "Hey man, we really dig these tracks. You guys want to come down and do a 7-inch?" They kind of started doing a lot of stuff at that time with, especially the Nardcore area. I think there's Rat Pack, RKL, a lot of Ill Repute recorded What Happens Next, Dr. No. So they were starting to like do a lot of stuff, and we were just one of those early Nardcore bands that they offered to do a 7-inch, and of course we jumped right on that. We went down there and blasted out those songs, and then after that, we kind of had a relationship with them, and it was like, hey, we're doing a cover compilation, or hey, we're doing a whatever, punk rock, Animal, whatever the hell those compilations were. And we just went down. We'd go do one song. We'd just go down there and spend a couple hours, knock the song out, record it, do the vocals, and be done and leave. And then you'd wait like 6 months to hear what it sounded like on a record.
Yeah, and your introduction to meeting all the Nardcore guys was meeting Tony in LA?
Yeah, pretty much. There was a pretty cool connection for a while here in Simi. We were doing some parties, and like Stalag was coming out and playing, and Dr. No would come out and play Ill Repute. But my first real, like, when I first met Tony the first time was at the cafe. They were playing a gig down there. I couldn't even tell you when it was. And I don't think we really knew each other or talked about anything at that time. As far as like recording or anything, or even being in the band, I was just like kind of in awe watching like a band that I really liked, because the Land in the Toilet record was out already, so I was kind of into that. And then it was kind of more like the parties that we were having out here in Simi when it started kind of meshing together, and we'd start going out to a lot of parties out there. A lot of bands. And I couldn't tell you how many times I saw Stalag play somewhere out there at a party, or some other band, and just started meeting a lot of people, and just, I think, being around our faces, we'd see each other, and it just kind of became we're part of this scene now,
Yeah, so cool. And
yeah, it was really cool. I can't even tell you how cool it was.
Yeah, and how did it feel when the actual 7-inch came out? Like, was that really rewarding? Like, it's your whole record.
Are you kidding me? They gave us a box of 50. That was like the I won't say reward, but that was like what the compensation we received. Yeah. And here we are standing at school. I think I was in 10th grade, and we're like at school, and we got this box of 7-inches. Like, yeah, our band did a record. It was cool as shit. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of. I mean, it was completely unlike anything you'd see nowadays. You didn't have access to music. There was no internet,
right.
And nobody had a record out. So regardless of what label it was or how it got put out, the fact that we actually had one, we started doing gigs, and you could tell, like, people knew who you were. The compilation that we were on, the Nardcore compilation, was big, and we were able to go play, and people kind of knew the name. And we put out a 7-inch, and it kind of made you feel like, yeah, like totally rewarding. Like, we're a band with a record, and not that it was something crazy, but we had music on vinyl, and it was pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, and it's a good record. I mean, it's a legitimately good, like, old hardcore record.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, for a bunch of kids who really didn't know what they were doing or singing about, it was was good for the times, man, and I'm not embarrassed by it by any means.
Yeah, and so that's 1985, and that when your 7-inch comes out, and that would be the, Scott, one second, I'm just going to shut a window. Some guy blowing leaves outside. One second.
I thought that came out in 84.
So the 7-inch comes out in 1985, and
I think it was 84, but I'm not sure.
Discogs is wrong a lot, and that's what I'm pulling it off of.
Okay.
Even though I have like 4 copies, so
okay.
There's lots of variations.
Either way,
there's like the cardstock cover. There's like the photocopy cover. There's one on blue. There's a bunch of stuff. But okay. So in '85, you go on tour with Ill Repute.
Yeah.
And not only is your band going on tour with them, but you actually play drums.
Yeah, insane.
How much notice do you get that you're going to play drums?
Well, we were getting ready to do this tour, and we were playing a gig somewhere out in Pomona. It was like this label called 12XU, and they were doing Toxic Shock Records. I don't know if they used to have like a little mail order record thing, right? I remember playing a gig out there with Ill Repute, and I had this little blue pickup truck, and we were sitting in it, me and John, and he's like, yeah, this would be cool to go on tour. And, they were talking about something, and if they took Carl's truck on tour, they were going to put a shell on it so they could have AC and all this shit. And so we were totally talking about going on tour together. And this was, I don't know, this was probably like springtime, or we were talking about for the summer. So somewhere between then and the summertime, I can't remember exactly what happened, but something went on with Carl and the band, and I can remember telling Tony, well, I'll play drums. And they came out to my house, they set up, we jammed, and I think it was like, okay, by then they're like, all right, well, cool, he can pull it. And so we did a gig in Bakersfield. We did a show in the Valley, this place called Sun Valley Sportsman's Hall that was doing a lot of shows back then. And then we actually went out and did the tour. So I had some notice. I played a couple of gigs, which was, not to sound, nostalgic or whatever, but they were kind of like I was kind of in awe at first because every song I knew by heart, and I didn't need to rehearse anything. Yeah. The only thing they told me to do was slow down. We're not playing as fast as the record, because so that was like the only adjustment I had to make. I knew everything, and yeah, that was insane to be able to play a set with our band and sing, and then like the whole time we'd be playing, all I knew is like as I was looking at the songs as we're going down the set list, the closer we'd get to the end, the more excited I'd get, because I knew like, wow, I still get to play another set and play drums with Ill Repute. And so that was pretty killer.
That is so cool.
That was cool.
I think it would be so wild though, filling in drums in that era of Ill Repute, just because by the time What Happens Next comes out, Carl is playing like this really wild style of drumming that's really untraditional, and for you to come in and like replicate it is pretty wild.
It was totally a different style, and that's like I said, it was super fast. Yeah. And so when we were jamming in my house, I just remember Jim kind of going, "Hey, slow down." He's like, "It's more adolescence feel." Right. And I remember there's no way that an Ill Repute song is going to sound like Kids in the Black Hole. Right. And so it wasn't like slow by any means, but it was more together. So it didn't sound as wild and crazy. And I didn't do all the all the crazy fills. It was pretty tight actually. And there was about 4 or 5 new songs that we were playing that hadn't even been heard yet, that were going on to I think the record was called Positive Charged or something, the next record that came out. Mm-hmm. Like Stop and Think, and there were some other songs that like, there was like an intro song that we were playing that nobody ever even had even heard yet. So I don't think I was the first one to play those, because I heard some examples of Carl doing those, but they hadn't recorded them or played them live yet. So, there was like a decent little chunk of the set that was, new stuff. So kind of had my own freedom to It was good. It wasn't too crazy. It was pretty well together. Like I said, it wasn't all over the place like what you'd think of What Happens Next, but or even like some of the songs on like the first 7-inch. But I mean, I think when you saw it live, you distinctly knew it was, you could tell they were Ill Repute songs. They were easy to follow along.
Yeah, of course, because they're catchy.
Yeah.
They're just one of those bands that can pull off beating that fast and still be catchy.
Yeah.
So
it was good at that time, man. I mean, those guys were, I think they were like kind of at a peak at that point too. They were playing a lot in LA. So as far as playing wise, those guys they were on it, and I stepped in and it was like, definitely a challenge, but I'd say that was definitely a high point for all of us at that time, as far as like those particular bands at that moment. Mm-hmm. It was, the scene was just, and even just in America in general, it was just kind of scratching the surface, and it was so much fun.
Yeah. And you're already getting scouted in high school for baseball though, right?
I was just going to school and I was playing. I didn't really know a whole lot about what was going on there. I'd get a couple things in the mail from like college or something, which I didn't have any chance of participating in college. I wasn't college bound. And then, the professional thing kind of happened. I caught wind of like, well, there might be a chance, you might be get a chance to get signed out of high school. And when I heard that, I just kind of thought, well, that's the route I'm going, and hopefully it happens. And I'd see scouts at the games. There was definitely, on the days that I was pitching, mm-hmm. you could tell there was like 15, 20 more guys behind the stands with radar guns that weren't there on the days that I wasn't pitching. So yeah, they're always at high school games.
I just wonder how that mixes with like punk in that wild time. Like, are you like cautious if you like go in the pit to like protect your arm, or like make sure you like don't get into fights and so forth because you're considering that your arm could be your livelihood?
It wasn't even a thought. I mean, I was driving out 3-4 days a week to this ramp out in Ventura, built by this guy named Rob, and somewhere in the sticks, like off the freeway. It was kind of more by the college. It was huge half pipe. This guy skated for, I think it was Barfoot, however you pronounce it. It was a company out of Santa Barbara, and it was like the total hangout. Guys were up there. Aggression would play, bring generators and play on the ramp. And, I never even thought about there was no protection at all. No, didn't going to a gig? It was like didn't think twice about anything. It was, I guess you feel pretty indestructible when you're that age. You don't really think about shit like that.
Yeah.
But I know the older I got, mm-hmm. Like as I started playing, I mean, I'd be riding my skateboard around with my dog or something, and people would ask me about skating. I say, I'm the best skater who doesn't fall, because I just made a point of not falling. So, but at that time, no, it didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah, I mean, skating pipe would definitely be way more dangerous, probably on the arm, than going to a show. So,
yeah.
So let's go to that tour. So in '85, you head out, and do you remember the routing at all? Like, do you remember what the first show was?
First show was in Tucson, Arizona. We left at late afternoon. Tony wanted to drive all night. We had 2 cars. We had this station wagon pulling the trailer, and we had my little mini truck. And because we had the Ill Repute guys, our band, and then we had this guy who came out from Australia who just knocked on my mom's door and said, "Hey, mate," he's like, "I love your band." He heard us on the Nardcore record. He goes, "I'm in the States, and can I crash at your house?" And so next thing I know, this guy's hanging out for a few months, and we said, "Well, you want to go on tour?" And he said, "Yeah." So we took him, and so it was I guess there was 8 or so of us that couldn't fit in my truck, and so we had this guy's car pulling a trailer. It was my truck. We took off late afternoon, like I said. We were on our way to Tucson, and I remember Tony wanting to do like these night drives, so it wasn't so hot. Right. So we would drive all night, and then we would like find some place to like. I think we woke up in a park, and then he would call the promoter, 10 o'clock in the morning. "Hey, we're in your city," and we'd go to this guy's house, the whole group of us, and then play a gig, and then the next night do the same thing. And so it was like, it was it was like Tucson, Albuquerque. Then we shot up to Denver. And they had some friends up there. And then we started working our way across. Lincoln, Nebraska was a ripping show. We started heading, that direction east. And, I just remember playing a really great gig in Pittsburgh one night, this place called the Electric Banana. And we stayed in the total hood. And when we woke up, our drummer, the guy who drew the Nardcore cover, the original one, he says, "Can I have the keys to the car?" And he walks out there and he comes back and goes, "Hey, where's the car?" And everything was gone, man. They stole the trailer, the car with all the equipment, everything. So, we were like, fuck, what do we do? We were in Pittsburgh. We're stuck in Pittsburgh. My truck was still there, but we didn't have any gear. We didn't have anything. And, it's not like there was cell phones or anything to like call ahead, or we didn't have resources to do shit.
Right.
And, we go to the police station, and it was like totally like a movie. This cop with a cigar in his mouth sitting, up higher, like this old precinct station somewhere in Pittsburgh. It's like, well, what are you guys doing in this neighborhood anyway? And, so we go back to the promoter's house, and we're just kind of sitting there all day, really not knowing what we're going to do. And I'm pretty sure Tony was handling a lot of the business stuff and making the phone call ahead to what was going on. And I think the next show was in Baltimore or something. And he had it arranged to where, we decided we were going to go on with the tour. The cops called us later that day and said, "Hey, we found your car and your trailer." So we all sprinted down to the police station.
Yeah. And
when we showed up, of course, the car was completely emptied out. The trailer was emptied out, but they found the car and the trailer. So we had no gear or anything, and I'm pretty sure we canceled a show. But then, Tony said, "Hey, then tomorrow night or whatever's in Baltimore, these guys are going to load us all their gear," and we went for it. So we went to Baltimore, and I remember it just kind of like the morale being shot when everything was gone.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody's clothes, everything was just stolen. And the show in Baltimore, I think there was a pretty good amount of people there, but just playing on like shit gear. It wasn't their guitars. It wasn't anything of ours. And I think the morale was just kind of dropped. And somewhere along the lines there, everybody, I don't remember who or what, but it was like, we're just going to like put our head between our tail between our legs and just turn around and go home. And that was it. And that was the decision that was made by from what I can remember, the higher up. And, I was just kind of going along for the ride. So that's kind of what we decided to do.
Yeah. And at that point, would that be about the halfway mark of the tour? Or you think you got 2/3 done?
I think it was probably about the halfway point, because we had made it all the way to the East Coast. And then, we were coming down through, after that, we were going to be coming down through like Raleigh and working our way through probably Florida, back across Texas and home.
Yeah.
So yeah,
wild.
We played a lot of gigs. I mean, we were in Kansas, Chicago. We did a lot of stuff getting our Detroit, working our way out that way. It was just, unfortunately we got to Pittsburgh and everything got stolen.
Yeah. You referred to, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Please.
No, I was saying it was, surprisingly, it was a really good tour up to that point. For the times, it was really good, and things were well, and it was two bands that were getting along well, and it was a good vibe.
Yeah, Pittsburgh fucked it all up. That's terrible.
It fucked it all up, man.
I know, because that is like, everyone talks pretty positively about the tour until that happens. So
yeah.
So you referred to Brian Walsby, and I wanted to clear up. Did he play on everything, like up to this point, on all the recordings, or did you play in some of the stuff as well?
I played on the Nardcore stuff.
Okay.
And then when I went to go sing the vocals, like I was telling you, like I recorded the drums on the Nardcore record,
right.
And then about 2 weeks later, they called and said, "Hey, you guys need to get down here and do the vocals." Our singer was out of town, so I asked the guys in the band. I said, "I'll go do it." And they said, "Okay." And Brian was my friend from home, and he would hang out with us. So I said, "Come down to the studio with me." So as I was recording the vocals, he was sitting in the lobby, and he was with the owner of the record label, Doug Moody. And he's like, "Well, what's the cover going to be?" And Brian starts drawing up these sketches, and the guy goes, "Would you like to do the cover?" And Brian says, "Yeah, sure." So he drew up the Nardcore record right there on the spot. And then I sang the vocals, and then we both got in the car and went home. And then I think around that time it was like, well, hey Brian, do you want to play drums? Because now I'm going to be singing.
Right.
And that's kind of how it happened.
And he played on the 7-inch.
So then he recorded on the 7-inch. He did a couple other compilations. And then when we did our full length record, because on that tour, Brian was getting super tight with the Corrosion of Conformity guys. Mm-hmm. And when we decided we were going to bail out in Baltimore, he said, well, Corrosion's coming up to New York in 2 days to play with the Bad Brains, so I'm just going to hang out here and hop in the van with them. And, I mean, it's going on 30 some odd years. He's never been home.
Yeah.
He hasn't come home yet.
That is, I'm so envious of like that lackadaisical lifestyle of just being able to do that, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to go chill with these guys, see what happens.
And, 35 years later, he's still living out there with them.
Yeah, that's so cool. So you get back from the tour, and this is 85, and you don't do an LP until 1988. Are you just focused on baseball? Because you start playing in the minor leagues in 86.
Well, I'm now at this point, like, I'm getting ready to go into my senior year of high school. So I'm still focusing on the band and, trying to find a drummer.
Yeah.
And we found it. We found a drummer to fill in for Brian. We started writing songs. We were playing a lot of gigs, and I didn't know where I stood with Ill Repute at that time. Ill Repute kind of went on a little bit of a hiatus for a while there. And they weren't doing anything once we got back home, and so we found a drummer, and we just kept hammering away. We started playing some really good gigs around LA. Found this really cool drummer. We were writing music. Things were kind of we went on another tour. I believe it was during the Christmas vacation of my senior year, which would have been 85, 86. We went on a tour, believe it or not. No Effects opened. There was a band called Entropy and a band called The Grim. And it was like the four of us traveling out through Texas and Arizona and New Mexico. And we did that over the 2-week Christmas break. And then, once baseball season started, I guess in March, I was kind of doing that, but still playing in the band. We're still doing killer shows up in San Francisco, San Jose area, Santa Cruz with the band Blast and a bunch of other cool bands. Like the Adolescents turned into this band called The Ads for a while, playing all the Adolescent songs. We were still doing great shows. Uniform Choice, we were playing a lot of gigs in LA with them. Just a lot of cool stuff. And then, I was playing baseball at the same time. And then in June they have the baseball draft, and I got picked. And I just left to go to baseball when that happened, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna go away for 2 months, guys. I'll see you when I come back. That's kind of what happened. That's pretty much what has been happening for the last 30 some odd years.
It's so crazy. So, is that the Gulf Coast White Sox in Sarasota?
That's what it was. Yeah, I went out there, somewhere around June, and I think that season lasted till August, and then I came home, and now at this point, the other guys in the band are going to college, and they went on to do other stuff, and so it kind of like I was doing baseball, and they're going to school, so we're just kind of time things up, and the gigs probably went from like 50 a year down to like 10, and it was what it was. But it
seems like a nice balance, though. Like,
what's that?
It seems like a nice balance. Like, you guys might actually enjoy it more instead of burning yourselves out, right? Like, here's punk season, here's college and baseball season. We
definitely figured it out. I mean, I can only think of maybe 1 or 2 bands that continue to do it full time that survived. I mean, to think that, like, I started playing music when I was in 7th, 8th grade, whatever year that was, and now here I am, 50-something-year-old man, and I'm still doing it. It's like there's a reason why, and it's because it never was a full-time commitment, and the balance is what's made it like realistically possible to continue, and for us to still enjoy it, and music's really, really hard. I mean, I don't know what the odds are, the percentages are to get into professional baseball, but to make it as a musician, it's got to be somewhere around the same, and we definitely were understanding of that, and everybody kind of had their priorities, what they had to do, and we never put the stress on. I mean, the band kind of, it probably sounds hypocritical, but or whatever, but the band came first, but it really didn't, if that makes sense. There was other priorities that, like, kind of took precedence, but the band was still very important.
Yeah, of course.
But we understood that it was important when we could make it happen, and we always found time to make it happen. So I think that's why it continued to survive.
Yeah. How did you enjoy living in Sarasota? It's a huge change, right?
Oh, it was Florida's full, like hillbilly, like redneck.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah, it was totally different. I mean, I didn't really live there. I guess I did for 2 months, but, I worked there. I was doing my thing for most of the day, and I'd go home. After being in the sun all day, you're pretty beat. Mm-hmm. Laying around watching TV and go to sleep. Wake up, do it again the next day. That was a pretty big adjustment. It was kind of like still going to school in a sense, where I had this obligation I had to go do, but instead they were paying us a little bit of money.
Right. So you do that 86, 87, and then in 87 you go to the Peninsula White Sox, Hampton, Virginia. And then the following year is the Scared Straight LP, 88.
Yeah, well, the thing is it was recorded like 2 years before that.
So it was recorded in like 86, you think?
I'll bet you it was recorded probably in 87.
Okay. So, but a full year.
I just remember it was a solid year before it came out. Mystic moved.
Right.
They packed up all the stuff in Hollywood somewhere around 86, and they moved down to San Diego, and they had all these storage warehouses, and so things were just kind of sitting in storage for a long time, and then I think they finally found a studio or something down there, and then they probably start opening up all the trunks and all the archives, and like, hey, let's put this out, let's put that out. So they started putting stuff out.
So you're a victim of the Mystic move.
They're probably still sitting on stuff that had never got put out, because I know we recorded at least 4 or 5 songs for some compilations that I've never heard. I've never heard since the day we did them. And they're somewhere.
I think that there was
Doug will put them out one day.
I think that there was a fire somewhere. Like
that I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, but or Doug's just sitting on them all. I'm trying to get him.
He's got it all somewhere in storage, man.
Yeah, he's the white whale.
That shit didn't burn down.
Yeah.
But whatever.
How do you feel about the LP compared to the 7-inch?
I thought the songs were better. The times were a little different. We recorded it a little different. We had a different drummer.
How did you record different? Did you recorded all the instruments separately this time?
Well, I think we recorded the instruments live. We had more time. It was like a different studio. It wasn't Mystic. It was a different studio somewhere down in San Diego.
Okay.
And so it was a little different. The one thing that was kind of a bummer about that is like I said, the record sat for, it was at least a year and a half, and we didn't know nothing about it. And then all of a sudden, a buddy of mine comes to my house with a cassette tape and goes, "Hey, look at this." I went, "No way." We didn't know what the record cover was going to be like. We didn't know anything. And, they just, like I said, they just discovered the tape, said, "Oh, hey, we got to put this out." They slapped together a cover for us, and they put all the shit out, and that was that. And they never even told us. So I found out by a friend who went to a local record store and came to my house with a cassette tape going, "Hey, your guys' record's out." Like, what? And of course we went down and tried to buy all of them. And that was that.
Was he able to get?
It was crazy. A little different, in the sense that like we knew the 7-inch was coming out. We were totally a part of it, and we were proud. And then all of a sudden it was like, what? We weren't really a part of it. It just kind of happened.
Was Doug easy to get on the phone? Could you just call him up and be like, "Well, what happened?"
Doug would always be easy to get a hold of on the phone if he'd answer.
Yeah.
And he'd always give you the time to talk.
Yeah.
I actually had a pretty good relationship with him. I was one of 2 people that helped them move the entire studio down to San Diego, and I think he was always, grateful for that. And I can remember Doug coming up to my house, to my mom's house, eating dinner with him and this guy Phil, who was his right-hand man. And so I definitely had a good relationship with him, but they were still, I don't want to use the word shady, but they were just like unreliable when it came to like the communication side of things. He was down there taking care of a sick mom that was like in her 90s or something. So, I mean, I guess I get it. And once he left the Hollywood rat race and the whole lifestyle he had with, tons of years leading up to the whole punk rock thing, I guess he just kind of like took off and got away from it all. And you know, here I was, this you know, snot-nosed kid still, you know, in my teens. And, you know, I mean, it was cool that he'd even give us the time of day, but there wasn't like consistent communication now.
Yeah, did you ever see that he put out a Fernando Valenzuela picture 7-inch in like 81?
I'm sure he did. I actually saw him do a reissue of a CD called "It Came from Slimy Valley," and on the backside it's like it's a Scared Straight record featuring Scott Radinsky. Like, that's pretty gay, Doug. Come on, you know. But whatever, man. You can't. I mean, those are things that are like kind of out of our control, you know.
Yeah.
Like I said, he just started slapping stuff together and putting it out, just to put it out.
Yeah. Do you see like an increase in popularity or anything when you put out an LP though?
Well,
because now you have more songs out for people to sink their teeth into.
Well, yeah, but then at the same time, it's like kind of like the whole punk thing was kind of going in a different direction. It seemed like everybody was getting like speed metal and all this other kind of like thrash metal kind of stuff. And,
yeah, 88's a rough year for punk.
The late 80s, it was not, you know, it wasn't what I was accustomed to. Like, there was a really healthy, and of course it was super violent, but there was like this really thriving scene in LA, Oxnard, Santa Barbara, you know, just, it was kind of the valley. I mean, I saw Minor Threat in Chatsworth.
Yeah.
You know, it was just, it was good. And then the late 80s, you know, there was really only one place. Remember the country club in the valley was kind of going on, and it wasn't really till some point in the late 80s when I think Bad Religion started playing, and then there was a little bit of a swing in a different direction. But for a couple of years there, man, a lot of the bands just stopped playing. You know, whether there was no place to play, or it just, I don't want to say the scene died, because it didn't die. Yeah. But so when you ask about the increased popularity, no, not that noticeable, because things were kind of going in a different direction. We still had the same consistent base we had from before.
Yeah.
But it definitely didn't grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Bad Religion gets back together and they do Suffer in 88. So 86 to 88 was probably pretty rough, I would assume.
Yeah. So like, I remember like probably around 89 and, you know, the early 90s, it was still kind of like feeling its way through. And then at some point, like 92, 93, it went back to being that same, like, healthy, thriving, but like a different style, you know?
Yeah. Broke.
Yeah.
So you do 88 in Sarasota again. Then you go to South Bend for the South Bend White Sox in 89. And then you break through and go pro in 1990 with the Chicago White Sox. It seems like such a long time to be in the minors and then break through. That had to be the craziest feeling in the world.
Well, I mean, when you come out of high school, I think the average to get to the big leagues, you know, is 4 years is pretty good.
Okay.
When you're a high school player,
that's right.
4 years
we're cutting
phenomenal.
out college. Yeah, we're cutting out college. So basically, your minor league time is your college time.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Now, imagine a guy who comes out of college at 22, and it still takes him a few years to get to. Now he's 26. I think the average age you get to big leagues is like 26.
Okay.
No, it was it seemed like a long time, but you know, at the same time, really, it wasn't. It kind of flew by. My age, I was always younger. I mean, when I first went to, you know, in '86, more than 3/4 of the team were all guys from Arizona State, all these big time college guys, and I was way out of my league. I was like the little pup,
right?
And you know, it just kind of took a while and then once it happened, I shot past all of them, you know, and it happened really quick. And timing's everything. It was the right place at the right time, and you know, I had the right manager who didn't care and was like, I don't care how old this kid is, I don't care where he played last year. What I'm seeing, he deserves to be on this team, and he took a chance on me, and you know, for both of us, it paid off.
Did you always feel like you were on that trajectory, like you knew you were going to make it to the big leagues?
I didn't. I didn't know for a while. I got injured and went through the whole, you know, had surgery, went through the rehab process, and then the Caltrans job started looking pretty entertaining. I didn't really know what was going on. And then, as I was going through this rehab process and I started like actually training for the first time, I used to go to this therapy place, this physical therapist, and it was a woman, and she was actually putting me through this training, and I was like, I started noticing significant differences in like strength and what I could do. Mm-hmm. And that's when I really started to believe in myself. So when I got back on the field after my injury, which was 87, I had to rehab through 88. When 89 came around, I was the most confident person. I never went to the gym or did stuff like that, but you could see how those guys probably feel confident about themselves, and they're staring in the mirror and they see their biceps and their chest. I didn't bulk up, but I just got physically strong because of, and being a pitcher, you have to kind of keep your elasticity, and, you don't want to get muscle bound.
Right.
But, this lady ran me through some shit that I got so much confidence after going through all of it. And it just made the 89 season so easy. And I just absolutely dominated and felt like I did in high school again, both physically and mentally. Mm-hmm. And then that year, I absolutely 100% thought I can totally fit in here and I belong here.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest challenge you have to overcome in that profession is there's a lot of guys that have the talent. There's not a lot of guys that believe they belong there. And once you believe you belong there, well, then natural ability just takes over. And I don't want to say it becomes easy, but it certainly becomes easier. And that's what happened to me was I was physically strong. I prepared myself the best I could. And then mentally I started having the success to where I was like, fuck, I belong here. And I'm way better than these guys. You start looking at, your left and your right, and you start sizing yourself up, and you start thinking, there's nobody on this team better than me. And that's kind of how you have to feel about it. Yeah. Obviously not outwardly cocky, but just inside that confidence. And so that year in 89, that's when that feeling started. And then I knew the trajectory I was on that path.
Right. And then in 1990, you start Chicago White Sox.
Exactly.
You do 90, 91, 92, 93. And then, so it's been a long time since Scared Straight does recordings. Do you slow down a little bit in that time just because you're in the majors?
Well, that's kind of when we made that transition of, I'm going to baseball now for 8 months, but during that 4-month period, we still did just whatever we could do. We wrote, we did shows, whatever was going on at the time. And like I said, there was a couple of years where things were a little, I don't want to say dead, but they were just slower just because, it's like I said, the 50 gigs a year would turn into 10, we'd play with RKO at the Oxnard Community Center, and then we'd go do a show up in San Francisco with Sam I Am, and then, maybe there wouldn't be a gig for another 2 months, and we'd play somewhere down at Long Beach, and maybe we ended up playing a handful of shows that particular year, then I left to go to baseball. Come back home the next year, play a gig at the country club with BI or something, and they were just more sparingly happening, and until somewhere around the early 90s. But
yeah, the reason why I ask is just because Swill and Rev, they come out like in back-to-back years. Is that did Swill get recorded like earlier and take a while to come out, or were you just so prolific those 2 years?
Well, just what years are we talking about now?
Okay, so it looks like Swill comes out in 1993, and it's I think that maybe on the cassette you're called Scared Straight, and on the CD you're called 10-Foot Pole. That's when you make the transition.
It was Scared Straight. It was recorded as Scared Straight.
Okay.
Now, remember what you said about what year it was, and like we were talking, from 88, from 86 to 88, 89, it's kind of dead. Mm-hmm. 90, it's kind of slow. Well, we probably started writing those songs somewhere around 92. We recorded them, and we recorded them, and then we recorded them as Scared Straight. We actually printed the copies of Scared Straight. Now all of a sudden, the scene's starting to kind of change,
right?
Nice. And that's why there's those back-to-back years, and then things after that just kind of came in succession, for years and years and years to come. But it's because of the era and because of the not demands, but just, it was like, it was the times. And, so we recorded the Scared Straight record, and we were supposed to put it out on Fat Records.
Okay.
And, we were talking with Mike, and he's like, I really think maybe a name change, it's a different style of music. Maybe it's a fresh start. You wouldn't have to correlate yourself with the past. And so we started thinking about all this stuff. And at that point, we had already printed 1,000 copies or 2,000 copies. So we basically took a sticker, and once we decided to change the name to 10-Foot Pole, we took a sticker and opened up every single package of, everything that was packaged under Scared Straight. And we put the sticker right over the CD rather than reprint them, and just called it 10-Foot Pole. Yeah. And blocked out anything that said Scared Straight with a Sharpie. That's what we did on those first, however many thousands of copies there were. And then after that, we started printing the 10-Foot Pole versions. And then, this, whatever that was, 93, we sent a copy to Epitaph. Brett said, "Hey, this is cool. I want to put out a record." Well, we were already writing songs, and like, okay, cool. We put a record out on Epitaph, and then, 90, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000, all those years were just, we just put out records because, under one band or another, whatever the name was, because of the opportunity. Yeah. And it was, like I said, the times were different, but for that lull period, there wasn't anything going on because there was no record label. There was no a scene, but there wasn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, just something clicked because I think Swill is a good record, but Rev is an amazing record. I think it's one of the greatest albums ever.
Well, that's cool, man.
And so it's wild that just something clicked. I don't know who the main songwriter was for Rev, but I mean the music really changed, but not in a weird regressive way. Like, it got unique. That record sounds like nothing else. I mean, nothing else really ever sounded like it again after, I mean, it's hard because the 10-Foot Pole records after, obviously you don't sing on them. So it's hard to compare them because the guitarist's voice he kind of sounds like Weird Al. It like pulls me out of it.
Yeah. I haven't heard it, but I've heard those comments, but the Swill record was written definitely different than anything we had done previously, Scared Straight wise. Right. It was written with a more conscious effort of a different type of style. Like I said, the Bad Religion record came out. There was different thoughts in we started listening. We heard Green Day. So there was, it was like, wow, this is kind of like not poppy, but a little more melodic. And then it just kind of kept transitioning into the Rev record. We were all the same writers, but the style changed. I mean, I'd like to think that like we went from not so much screaming, but kind of like that youth anger to like where we actually really did start singing. Yeah. And we were making a conscious effort of writing, I guess, happier notes rather than, the typical like hardcore, just anger, sour notes. And so that's kind of the direction it went. And it just kind of continued on that path as did, 90% of the bands that were writing music at that time. So,
yeah, but the Rev record just sounds more urgent and serious and just better than most of the stuff like of 94, I think. So maybe Swill is kind of like a demo era for that next transition.
It totally was a demo era.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And then Rev, just something hits, and I mean, it's just one of the things where everything lines up perfectly. And
we had an idea of where we were headed.
Right.
Like once we got past Swill, it was like, okay, this is the direction we're going.
Yeah.
And like if you listen to Swill, there's some weird songs on there that probably didn't fit. They weren't all. But then when we decided to go Rev, we had a direction. So not that all the songs sounded the same, but there was definitely a more clear direction in where we were headed when we were songwriting. So it was definitely easier to go once we had a style we wanted to try to accomplish. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then you have a major life event here, and so you do 4 years in the majors, and then you put out Swill, and then you put out the best record of your career up to this point, 94, and then you get sick. And how
I was actually the reason the Rev record got so dialed in was I got sick in February and we hadn't recorded the record yet.
Oh.
We recorded the record during that summer. I was recording the record, while going through chemo treatments, and we were writing a lot of that music leading up to the, going into the studio. I was at home, so the fact that we were all together was a big part of writing a lot of those songs. But I recorded the whole record, while going through all those treatments. The record, didn't get put out till after the fact.
Crazy. And yeah, and then you don't play baseball in 94.
94, yeah, I don't play baseball.
And how does that feel for you? Like, this is like the first year you haven't played baseball probably in your life since going back to like 5 years old, right?
Yeah, since Little League. Yeah, it was weird, but like I said, I had something totally different on my mind. I was, I had to go to the doctor once every 2 weeks, get, these treatments. And then once that was over for 6 months, then I had to go through these radiation treatments. So baseball was kind of like the farthest thing on my mind. Mm-hmm. And thank God for the musical outlet, because, it did allow me to kind of keep myself a little occupied with something. I was going to my high school and like hanging around there, helping out the baseball team and trying to do as much as I could actively. And thank God for, no internet at that time for me, because I didn't have any ability to research what I had or know. The doctor said, this is what you got to do. And I just kind of put my head down and thought, okay, well, I got to get through this. It's going to take me about 8 months, and I'm not going to look up until I get there. Yeah. And that's kind of what I did. And once you're going through that, yeah, the rest of the shit going on around the world is kind of secondary.
Yeah, but you powered through it. And
totally powered through it. How else can you get through it?
Yeah. But you bounce back, and in 95, you go back into the minors, South Bend, Indiana, the South Bend Silverhawks.
I played in Chicago all year.
Okay.
I got put on the DL about halfway through the year for about 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Because
at least both lists.
I just wasn't performing, and understandably, I missed the whole year. But not to mention missing the whole year, my body physically went through some hell.
Okay.
And I probably shouldn't even have started the year in 95, but their loyalty and my determination was, I'm going to make it. And I showed spurts here and there, but it just wasn't consistent. So I went down to South Bend. Well, really what I did was they gave me a 2-week break is what it was. And okay. I pitched in a couple of games in South Bend. They're called like rehab assignments. Mm-hmm. And then they just gave me a break to get my body a rest. And something happened in that 2 weeks, that 2-3 week period where, I got a little recharge, and I was getting further away removed from, going through all those treatments that beat me up. And it just takes time.
Yeah.
And when I came back that second half, that last quarter of 95, I was pretty good, man. It was, my body was physically, I was showing life again of, I could come into a game and not be huffing and puffing by the time I got there.
Right.
So I could physically start telling. I could see that I was able to do more. So it was kind of more of a mutual. Like, they'd sat me down one day in New York, and it was like, hey man, we don't want to see you out there struggling, and what do you think about this? And they proposed the idea, and I said, well, yeah, if that's what you want me to do, I guess I had to come with reality and accept that, like, my body probably needed that.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. And then you get you get some confidence back.
Oh, totally. And from that point on, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I needed to get through the physical repairing of what my body, the shit that I had to go through.
Right. And at this time, though, you have another kind of major life event, is that you separate from 10-foot pole.
Yeah, I'm asked to leave, due to the success of the Rev record and the new label, and now all of a sudden everybody who, was going to college was out, mm-hmm. and they had jobs, and they were in the working world, and kind of realized, like, this sucks, and here was this opportunity, and I think they lost that mindset of why the band had stayed successful for years up to that point. And why we had all remained friends and been the same band members, which a lot of bands interchange.
Yeah, you're on a 10-year run. You're a 10-year run at that point.
Well, yeah, and it was never this is what we do. Well, you know, after the Rev record came out and I had to take off and leave for baseball, I think the opportunities that were coming in and, you know, the constant, well, shit, we can't play, we don't have a singer. And, you know, I just think that they kind of thought, well, we have a chance to do this. We want to be the next Pennywise.
Sure.
And, you know, that was the decision they made. They asked me to leave. And I just thought to myself, well, why don't you guys start a new band for 8 months? And why don't we keep this thing that we have, you know, for 4 months a year that we've made successful over the years and found a way to be successful. And they just decided that was the route they were going to go. And I think that was already a predetermined decision when they called me. And you know, what was I going to do?
Yeah.
You know, start a new band.
Yeah. And it doesn't take you long to put together Pulley.
It took me 24 hours.
Yeah. And
24 hours. And you know what? I got to be honest, at that point, you know, everybody has their issues and you know, it's tough getting along. Everybody, especially once you start to see everything was cool until we did the Rev record and got on Epitaph. And then I won't name names or anything, but just people's egos start to swell a little bit. And like I said, kind of lost sight of what the band really was, the way it started out. And I think that kind of took over the mentality, which ultimately ended up ruining the name. But it was an opportunity to pick up the phone and like call these people that I had never been in a band with that were friends of mine. And it's like, hey, you want to start a band? You want to have some fun? We're gonna record a record, and we're gonna get to be on Epitaph. Because that was my whole thing in the beginning. Was I right away called Epitaph? Said, how am I getting kicked out of my own band? And Brett just said, hey, you know what? These guys want to do this thing. You know, just go ahead and put a band together and show me the songs, and you know, I'm sure we'll do something. So I thought, okay, well, cool. I'm just determined, and like I said, it was fresh for me to like be able to like reach out to these friends that played and said, hey, you want to start a band and have fun? And within 6 months, we started a band, recorded the songs, wrote the songs, and put out a record, and it was awesome, and it's been awesome for the last 25 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great debut album. A Steam-Driven Engine, 1996, Epitaph. Yeah. And Brett must have been pretty sympathetic also, because that's right around the time that he's leaving Bad Religion and stuff.
Well, he said the same thing to me. He goes, well, dude, I got kicked out of my own band.
You're right.
You know, I got a record label, and my band wants to record on a major label. And he went through the same exact similar situation. And he was all about it. I mean, he was all about, like, put together some songs, and of course. And we way outlasted 10 Foot Pole on that label.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we wrote a lot better records. Am I disappointed that 10 Foot Pole had to disband the way it did? I mean, personally, yeah, because I think that if we would have continued to build off Rev, I think it would have been pretty good. But we never had that opportunity because they wanted, I don't want to say the fame and the fortune, but they wanted to take advantage of the popularity at the time. And like I said, kind of lost sight of what the band really was and what it was supposed to be. And you know, let's be real. When we all starting a band, where do we start? We start in a garage, a bunch of buddies jamming, having fun, and it's not supposed to be taken that seriously. And once it does, that's when that's when the shit just hits, and everybody starts the arguments, and you know, just everybody the different directions, and everybody wants to throw in their opinion at that point, and it just the fun's gone. And so definitely made a conscious effort somewhere around 95 when we started Pulley. It was like, this is the way it's going to be. And I had to be upfront and honest because of the experience I just had with the guys that were joining, and they were totally on board, and Brett was totally on board, and he knew we weren't a touring band. He knew about my baseball thing, and he totally supported that. And he said, just put out good music. And that's all he ever said. And I'm assuming the fact that he put out, 5 records over however many years, he must have thought, okay, it was good music.
Yeah, of course.
So then that's what we did.
Yeah.
But to answer your question initially, yes, he was sympathetic, I'm sure, because like he was going through the same experience.
Yeah. Did you ever reconcile with the 10-foot pole guys?
Well, the drummer Tony, everybody in 10-foot pole eventually quit,
right,
except for the singer guitar player.
Okay.
The first one to leave was the bass player. He left, couldn't take it anymore, and he's still a guy that I would communicate with. The drummer Tony left 10-foot pole and immediately joined Pulley. The other guitar player, Steve, I think he was the last to leave, and I'm not exactly sure what he's doing now. If I saw him, we'd be, I'm sure we'd, hello, how you doing?
Sure.
I have not spoke to Dennis at all in the however long it's been, 26, 27 years. I haven't spoke to him. Haven't reached out. So yeah, no, really, there's been no reconciling. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there bitterness? There's no bitterness. There's just, they made a decision back then, and the way I look at it is, you wanted me out, and okay, I left and went and did something else. I have no reason to go back and revisit that.
Yeah. Well, also in 1996, you get every Southern California kid's dream, and you get to go play for the Dodgers. So, were you a Dodgers fan growing up?
Oh, fuck yeah! Are you kidding me? I was a Dodger fan my whole life, and I the day that the White Sox said they didn't want to bring me back, the first thing I did was said, well, what do I got to do to play for the Dodgers? And the Dodgers already had some left-handed pitchers. And I actually turned down guaranteed major league offers with a couple of clubs to sign a minor league deal with the Dodgers just to take a chance. And I remember Tommy Lasorda called me on a Sunday and said, we'll give you every opportunity to make this ball club. And I remember sitting in my house just kind of laughing, going, well, Tommy, if you just get me there, I said, I'm not concerned about that. I'll make your team. I'm not worried about it. Just give me the opportunity to be a Dodger.
Yeah.
And that was how I felt, physically. And I busted my ass.
And this is
I had something to prove, man.
Yeah.
And I showed up to spring training in '96, and I had 3 of the best years of my life. 96, 97, 98. I'm 30 miles from the ballpark. Yeah. Living at home, and like you said, I went to Dodger Stadium every day for 3 years, and it was awesome.
So awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you have any standout stories from your time with the Dodgers?
Any what?
Any standout stories of your time with them? Anything that's memorable?
That's all the Pulley stuff was going on at that time, so there was a lot of good times. I recorded 3 records. We recorded steam. We recorded a steam-driven engine. Mm-hmm. On my way to the stadium, I'd stop the studio, sing a song, go to the field, come back home, come back to the studio after the game, record another song, and record the vocals. And I did that for a week straight. And I recorded the first 2 records that way. And then the 3rd record we actually recorded after the season. Okay. So I was actually able to be a part of that on an everyday basis. But standout stories of being a Dodger, all the people that I've watched my whole life, I'm sitting on a team, and Mike Sosier's a coach, Reggie Smith's a coach, Bill Russell's a coach. Yeah. Tommy Lasorda's the manager. That's enough right there for me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I just don't know how everyone associates. Do you get to go to dinner with Tommy Lasorda and stuff?
No. It's baseball's kind of one of those things where 25 guys going their own way after the game, really. But when we're at the field, it was just, there was a lot of, I definitely say the first couple of weeks, I was just walking around, wow, look at this. This is awesome, Yeah. It was a little surreal for a while. Probably my best memory one day, I don't remember what year they held the All-Star game in Cleveland, but they had the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame there. So the baseball guy for ESPN, Peter Gammons, decides, he knew me and he knew my whole musical thing. And it started by him being in an airport and seeing being somewhere in a newsstand, and seeing a Maximum Rock and Roll with me on the cover throwing a baseball with it saying 10-foot pole across my chest. So out of curiosity, he picks it up, and that's kind of how our relationship developed. Mm-hmm. So anytime I'd ever see him around a baseball field, and him being a big music guy, he would always bring it up to me. So one day on the field in Dodger Stadium, we're taking batting practice, and as we're coming off the field, I see Peter kind of motioning over to me, and he's got Johnny Ramone and Eddie Vedder, and he's going to do this piece for the All-Star game that's going to be held in Cleveland, and it's tied into the Hall of Fame. It's like a musical themed thing. So he shows up out of all 30 teams and out of all the baseball players out there. He comes to LA with these two guys to do an interview with me. So that was pretty cool, man. It's like we're all standing around home plate. Peter's asking questions, and I'm fucking standing there with Johnny Ramone and Eddie, and they're huge baseball fans.
Yeah.
And that was pretty cool. And the guys on the team they didn't know who the fuck Johnny Ramone was, but Pearl Jam was huge at that time. So all the guys on the team were just freaking out. They couldn't believe it. Eddie Vedder, like they couldn't believe it. And I think at that moment, there was a lot of guys on the team that probably realized, like, fuck, dude, what's this band you're in? Like what's going on? And then a steam-driven engine came out, and of course everybody wanted a copy, and it was kind of cool, man. It was a cool moment, definitely.
Yeah, and that's a palatable album that I think that even if you're not into punk rock, you can enjoy it.
Yeah, it wasn't too harsh.
Yeah,
definitely wasn't like the first 7-inch we ever put out.
That's right. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit just about like transitioning out of baseball, because I think it's so interesting with professional athletes that basically you do something your whole life and then it's kind of like over, but you're young in human terms, but you're old in sporting terms. So the last year you play professionally is 2001 or 2002?
I think it was 2002.
Yeah. You do the Cleveland Indians 01 and then Calgary Cannons 2002?
Yeah, it was with the Marlins, yeah.
Okay. And
yeah, I went to spring training with the Indians and didn't make the team, so then I came home for a couple weeks and then got picked up by the Marlins and went to their AAA team for a while, and just I don't know, was kind of losing the enjoyment, I guess, and finished it out. And then 2003, have some offers to go to spring training and just wasn't feeling it, and started talking to some people about was getting interest in the other side of it, like front office or coaching. And
sure.
So then 2004, I start with the Indians as like a special instructor or something, and kind of transition to that side of it. So it really was never over for me.
Right, because you start being a pitching coach for them in 05?
Yeah. So, but I spent the whole year in 04 kind of learning about the whole side of the game, and working with the front office people, and how they evaluate, and just a different side of it. Really not a lot different than what you would do as a player, evaluating a hitter, or how you want to get him out, but just more like, what does this guy bring to the table? What can we do to improve him? What's his strengths? What's his weakness? Things like that I probably wouldn't have paid attention to on a fellow player when I'm trying to dissect them. And I knew that I wasn't going to be, I wasn't going to go home and do nothing. I don't play golf.
Right.
I'm not going to be you know what I mean? It's like, I can only ride my mountain bike for so long during the day. And it's like, what am I going to do? So I always wanted to stay in baseball. So that was, so the transition there really wasn't a transition of not being in baseball. It was just more of like changing of a role.
Yeah. And you were really successful in doing that because you've done it ever since, correct?
I mean, I'd like to think successful. Yeah. I mean, I understand people. I think my background, certainly, different, adversities I've had to overcome. I'll tell you what, man, when you're living the life of a baseball player and you're, staying at a Hyatt hotel and, a Westin hotel, and then, a month later you're sleeping on a floor in Germany. I think that those worldly experiences kind of help you relate to people. And when I was a coach and transitioned into that role, you're responsible for, these pitchers on your team. And I love being a player. Mm-hmm. There's nothing better than being a player. But I'll tell you what, when you're a coach and you're living through those those 12 different pitchers on a team, and you're in every single pitch of every game, and you're right there with them, and you're there to, like, pat them on the back, you're there to stick your foot up their ass, you're there to, support, and the whole thing. It's a super gratifying feeling to be that guy, and it's pretty fulfilling. But I definitely think that my personal experiences, that I've had to go through, and along with the other things that I've been exposed to throughout the world, the different types of climates of the world, made it really easy for me to talk to a kid from Texas or California or some kid from the Dominican Republic. I relate to it all.
Yeah.
And not every coach I ever had could do that. So I did feel like that's like a special strength of mine is the ability to understand people, because that's all it is. I mean, it's not about teaching a guy how to throw a slider. It's more about, like, keeping a guy on the tracks of this roller coaster that have these ups and downs over the course of an 8-month season, because the reality is you're not going to be good the whole time, and there's going to be a lot of downtime where you're not good and you're not successful. It's a game of failure.
Yeah.
And you just kind of keep them. I always think of it as like a bowling alley, and my job was just to kind of keep them out of the gutter all the way down till they hit the pins, and the season was over. And that's the way I see it.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well,
Yeah.
Scott, I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.
This has been awesome. And
Hope I didn't get too long-winded.
No. That's kind of how I like to do the show, is to make it long-winded, because I'm not trying to do an entertaining podcast. I'm trying to do a informative podcast. So.
Well, cool.
But
hopefully it was informative.
Yeah. Well, I do want to just put the exclamation point on it that Pulley has still been going the whole time, and you guys never stopped putting out records.
Ever.
Yeah, I mean,
got
the 2000s.
Eight new songs on my phone right now that are getting ready to be put out at some point.
yeah. I mean, you talked through the first 3, and then in 2001 you do another record. In 2004 you do another record. 2005, 2008, 2011, 2016. So, I mean, you just found. It's really admirable that you found a great life balance, that you were able to figure out how to do music for basically your whole life. I think that's
well, if you love something, it's not going to just go away.
Right.
And I've been very fortunate to be paired with people that have that same like-minded mentality towards it, and that's why we all enjoy still doing what we're doing. It's being in a band is supposed to be having fun, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks
that's
so
what
much.
Music is.
Agreed. Yeah. I got to ask, do you feel like you've been well represented on the podcast?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All good, man.
Great.
Appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.